Hidden Beauty. Chapter 1. A Bargain Not Love. Leo Hunt had never believed in love. He owned the largest hotel chain, contracts were signed daily, and the numbers in the reports were the only thing he trusted. His life was strictly planned, and even his own marriage he viewed not as a romantic adventure but as a strategic alliance. So when his lawyer told him that the best partner for him would be Selena Harper, heiress to a powerful financial empire, Leo didn't even hesitate. "It's ideal," the lawyer said. "Marriage will provide you with both markets. Her father wants a man who can run the business by her side. You have the support of their family. It's pure profit." Leo flipped through the file. The photo of his wife-to-be was unimpressive. A modest, unassuming girl with glasses and her hair in a tight ponytail. She resembled a diligent student who spends her days reading books, not an heiress to a billion-dollar fortune. Not pretty, his mind raced. But that was even better. Leo wasn't looking for passion, didn't want turbulent feelings. A marriage of convenience was supposed to be a simple transaction. He closed the file. All right. When's the wedding? Chapter 2. Shock at the ceremony. The wedding day was perfect. An expensive mansion, hundreds of guests, the glitter of jewelry and cameras. Leo stood at the altar, coldly looking over the guest list. He didn't even try to look toward the door where the bride was supposed to emerge from. Until the moment when the hall froze. A slight whisper, admiring glances. Leo reluctantly raised his head, and a shock struck him. A completely different woman was walking toward him. It couldn't be Selena Harper. In the pictures, she was an unassuming, pale girl. But now there stood before him a refined, dazzling beauty. Her silk dress accentuated her graceful figure, her long curls fell in soft waves, and her eyes glowed with a confidence that frightened and mesmerized him at the same time. When she came closer, their gazes met. She noticed his confusion and grinned. "I don't look as you expected, do I?" She whispered softly. Leo swallowed. "Not at all." She bowed her head. "Oh, get used to it." She took his hand and stepped down the aisle. Leo suddenly realized that this marriage of convenience might be more complicated than he'd thought. Leo was used to being in control. Every deal, every word, every detail. But Selena Harper was unpredictable. On their wedding night, he'd expected her to be awkward, because her record showed that she'd been out in public and lived under her father's shadow. But when they were alone in the luxurious hotel suite, he was the one who felt out of place. Selena stood at the window, looking wistfully out over the nighttime city, holding a glass of wine. "Are you disappointed?" she asked quietly, not turning around. Leo hummed. "More like intrigued." "Intrigue is a good start," she said. Then turned and stepped closer. "Let's get this straight, Leo." Her voice was soft, but there was steel in it. "Did you think you were going to marry a quiet, modest girl who would sit in the corner and rejoice in your wife's status?" He didn't answer. She grinned. "I'll disappoint you. I'm not a trophy. And I'm not going to live by your rules." Leo felt the excitement flaring in him. Selena wasn't just beautiful. She was dangerous. And he was beginning to realize that this game was going to be worth it. Chapter 4. Who controls who? At first, Leo tried to keep his distance. They played the roles of the perfect couple in front of the cameras, attended official events, but behind closed doors they lived as two adversaries. But every time he thought he'd miscalculated her, Selena stumped him again. She didn't just show up at business meetings, she participated in them. Once, during negotiations with investors, she had suddenly taken the floor and suggested an alternative deal that Leo himself had not even considered. After the meeting, he asked stiffly, "Do you always like to surprise, or do you just want to show that you're smarter?" Selena looked at him calmly. "Why does it have to be interchangeable?" Leo felt irritation boiling up inside. And with it, interest. Chapter 5. A confession he had not expected. Months passed. Leo could no longer deny the obvious. He was obsessed with her. Her every gesture, look, words, all of it occupied his thoughts even in moments when he should have been thinking about work. but he didn't want to admit it. Until that night. At one of the receptions, a large investor was clearly flirting with Selena. She smiled but kept her distance. And Leo felt a rage he'd never felt before. When they got home, he turned her sharply toward him. "Are you doing this on purpose?" Selena raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Doing what on purpose?" "Provoking me." She grinned. "Why did it work?" Leo clenched his jaw. "You're driving me crazy." Selena looked at him carefully. Then said quietly, "It's mutual." And it was then that he realized that their marriage of convenience had become something more. Chapter 6. Denial. Leo wasn't used to losing control. And that's exactly what was happening to him. Selena was everywhere, in his thoughts, in his plans, in his life. He'd never experienced anything like this before. Women in his world were either beautiful toys or business partners. But Selena, she shattered all his expectations. She was too smart, too confident, too beautiful. And most importantly, he didn't know if she loved him back. He was tormented by one question. What if he was just a pawn in her game? Chapter 7. First cracks. "You're avoiding me," Selena said one night when he stayed late at the office and came home past midnight. She stood in his office with her arms crossed over her chest. Leo sat down at his desk, trying to look nonchalant. "I have a lot of work to do." "And you're also scared." Her voice was steady, but there was a flicker of challenge in her eyes. Leo snorted. "Afraid? Of you?" Selena leaned closer, her gaze studying his face. "You're afraid to admit you can't control me anymore." He clenched his jaw. "Isn't that a little cocky? Am I not right?" Leo remained silent. Because she was right. Chapter 8. The Breakthrough. The next day he left for the country house on the pretext of work. He couldn't stay near her. He couldn't see her or touch her. But 2 days later, Selena came by herself. "Stop running, Leo," she said as she crossed the threshold of his office. He set aside the glass of whiskey and stood up, trying to keep his face straight. "We've made a pact, Selena. A business alliance. Now let's tell each other the truth." Leo was silent. "You want me," she continued. "You think about me every second." He clenched his hands into fists. "Do you?" She grinned. "What do you think?" At this point, Leo couldn't take it anymore. He pulled her to him, kissed her in a way he'd never allowed himself before. Deep, demanding, desperate. And Celine didn't pull away. She responded. And that's when he realized. This wasn't a game anymore. This was real. Chapter 9. Dangerous Feelings. After that night, everything changed. Leo thought he was finally gaining control of the situation, but instead he lost it completely. Selena hadn't dissolved into him, hadn't become a submissive wife as perhaps others would have done. She still kept her distance. Yes, she answered his kisses. Yes, their nights were long and hot now. But in the morning she'd get up early, clean herself up, and go to work like nothing had happened. Like nothing had changed. Like they were still just allies. Leo couldn't understand it. Why didn't she get as attached to him as he did to her? Or was she just pretending? Chapter 10. Selena's Mystery. One evening he decided to check out where she so often went after work. He knew it looked ridiculous. Leo Hunt, a billionaire stalking his own wife. But he couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. He sent his man after her, and soon got a report. Selena was dating some man. The photo, taken from afar, showed her sitting in a restaurant across from a tall brunette in a business suit. Leo clutched the phone in his hand. Who was he? A secret lover? A business partner? His heart clenched with anger. Selena couldn't just use him like that. He had to know the truth. Chapter 11. Anger and Frustration. The next morning at breakfast, Leo tossed a printed photograph in front of Selena. She raised an eyebrow as she looked at the picture. Were you following me? Her voice remained calm. Who is he? Leo ignored her question. Selena slowly picked up her coffee cup, took a sip, then looked at him with a slight chuckle. If you had asked, I would have told you everything. So tell me, he said, a dangerous tone in his voice. She set the cup aside and folded her hands in her lap. It's my brother. Leo froze. Brother? Selena nodded. He lives abroad, we don't see each other much. I didn't want to publicize our meeting because he doesn't like too much media attention. Leo felt everything inside him turn upside down. The brother. He suspected her. He was trying to catch her cheating. And she'd just met a family member. Selena looked at the picture again and shook her head. You don't trust me, do you? Leo didn't find anything to answer. Chapter 12. The first step to love. For a few days, Selena acted aloof. She was still polite, smiling in public, but when they were alone, tension hung between them. Leo hated that feeling. One evening he found her in the garden. She was sitting on a swing, staring pensively into the darkness. He stepped closer. Selena? She didn't turn around. You're used to being in control, Leo. But I'm not your toy. I'm not your pawn. I know. She sighed and finally met his gaze. Then prove it. Leo thought for a moment. And then said quietly, I love you. Selena didn't recoil, didn't look shocked. She just smiled sadly. I know, she said in a whisper. But there was doubt in her eyes. It was as if she were afraid to believe him. And now Leo realized it was his turn to gain her trust. Chapter 13. A test of feelings. Something had changed after that confession. Leo couldn't tell if it was for the better. Selena had become even more aloof. She hadn't rejected him, but she hadn't responded to the confession either. For the first time in his life, Leo felt like he didn't know what to do next. All of his deals have always gone according to a precise plan. But Selena, she was the only one who broke his schemes. Chapter 14. The decision to leave. A week later, Selena left. No warning, no explanation. Just left a note on the table. I need time. Leo stared at those 2 short sentences and felt panic growing inside. She hadn't said when she'd be back. Didn't say if she'd be back at all. He realized that if he let her go now, he could lose her forever. Chapter 15. The search. After 2 days, Leo couldn't take it anymore. He wired security, contacted her assistant, called every possible place she could be. The answer came unexpectedly. She's at her grandmother's house, the guard said. Leo was surprised. Selena had said almost nothing about her family. But if she'd gone there, then that place had special meaning to her. He didn't hesitate, got behind the wheel and drove himself. Chapter 16. Revelation. The house turned out to be a small, cozy cottage by the lake. Selena was sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, when he pulled up. She wasn't surprised to see him. You found me after all, she said quietly. Leo sat down beside her, but he didn't rush her. They were silent for a moment. Then she spoke. When I agreed to this marriage, I thought it would be easy. Business, partnerships, deals. No feelings. She looked at him. But I fell in love. Leo tensed. Then why did you leave? Selena lowered her gaze. Because I was afraid you didn't want me to. He felt his heart sink. She continued. I know you're used to getting everything, but I'm not a thing, Leo. I didn't want you to love me just because I turned out to be a challenge for you. She looked into his eyes. I needed to understand whether your feelings were real. Chapter 17. The last step. Leo took a deep breath. He understood everything now. And he wasn't going to lose her again. He took her hands in his and said firmly, I don't know how to speak beautifully. I don't know how to make romantic gestures. But I do know one thing. He paused, looking her straight in the eye. Without you, my life is empty. Without you, I don't feel like myself. Selena looked at him for a long moment. And then she smiled. Then don't let me go again. Leo covered her lips in a kiss. And in that moment he knew. They weren't playing for keeps anymore. This was the real thing. Chapter 18. A new chapter. After that night, everything changed. Selena no longer hid her feelings. Leo no longer tried to deny them. They were back in town now as a real couple, not packed allies. But that didn't mean things were going to be easy. Chapter 19. The Test of Trust. They were used to fighting each other. But now they had to learn to fight together. Leo began to let Selena into his world. He showed her the business not only from the outside, but also from the inside. She, in turn, was helping him see things he hadn't seen before. But the hardest part for both of them was trust. Chapter 20. Old Enemies. Not everyone liked the fact that Selena was no longer just a contract wife, but Leo's full partner. Some around him saw her as a threat. Some wanted to use it to divide them. And it soon led to the first real crisis in their relationship. Chapter 21. Framing. One morning Leo received an anonymous text message. It was a picture of Selena with another man. In a cafe. Too close together. Leo felt the very jealousy he hated flaring up inside again. But this time he didn't jump to conclusions. Instead, he asked her directly. Who is he? Selena looked at the picture and immediately realized what was going on. That's my business partner. But I think it was to someone's advantage to show you this particular angle. Leo studied her expression. No guilt. Just annoyance. Whoever did this wanted you to doubt me again, she continued. Are you going to give him that kind of power? Leo realized that this time he believed her. It was the first time he hadn't let his past fears control him. And it was then that he realized how much he had changed. Chapter 22. Wedding Rings. A few weeks later, they returned to that country house by the lake. In the evening, Leo pulled out a small box. We're married under contract, but I never did what I should have done from the beginning, he said as he opened it. Inside was a new ring. Not the official, business ring. It was the real thing. Marry me, Selena. For real. She smiled. I'm already your wife, Leo. Now I want you to be, not out of convenience, but out of love. Selena took the ring, looked at it, and then looked up. Then let's do it right. She pulled out her box. Inside was a man's ring. Are you ready to wear my ring like I wear yours? Leo laughed. I'm willing to do anything if it means you'll stick around. They exchanged rings right there under the starry sky. No witnesses, no cameras, no contracts. Just the two of them in their love. Epilogue. This is just the beginning. Selena and Leo didn't become the perfect couple from the romantic movies. They still argued, competed, and challenged each other. But now there was more than passion or partnership between them. Now there was a love between them that no one could destroy. And that's where their real story began.